Hello, welcome. My name's Jo Garofalo. I am FASD Lead Advisor for the FASD Hub Scotland. And our wonderful guest this evening is the lovely Georgia Roberts. Georgia's 21, and she's known that she's been affected by FASD ever since she can remember. I've met Georgia in person a couple of times, delightful young lady, and I'm not going to tell you all her story because that's her information, but I think what's really key to tonight is that not only has she lived with FASD, but she's also lived with other conditions. And through her time in mainstream full-time education, she's obviously faced various different challenges that I'm sure she'll share with you or give you insights into strategies. She has done amazing. She's had amazing achievements throughout her very young life, as I'm very old. She passed her driving test at the first attempt, which for me was an inspiration with a 13-year-old who desperately wants to drive, who has FASD. She's appeared on TV in documentaries about FASD, has spoken to MPs and ministers on how FASD has affected her life. She launched the UK FASD manifesto in Salford and the alcohol and pregnancy resources for the midwifery teams, where she spoke alongside the Deputy Chief Medical Officer of England and contributed to face-to-face training. So for 21, I think despite everything, she's making huge strides and gives myself as a parent, in my role just as a parent away from Adoption UK, huge inspiration, not only for what she's doing, but for also for how her parents have supported and advocated. And this has now led to her being an advocate for herself and for other young people and families coming forward. So welcome, Georgia, and thank you so much for joining us and giving us your time this evening.
Hello. No, that's okay. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to go straight into and dive into the areas that I think our community would really benefit from listening to your lived experience. So we're going to first of all talk about education, and that's an area where we have a huge amount of questions and a huge amount of parents and families seeking support. So my first question to you this evening is, how do you feel about your educational experience?
For me personally, I mean, everyone with FASD, it's going to be a journey, but I struggled, but I also learned so much. For me, it kind of broke me out of my head and put me in a social environment. And even if I didn't gain qualifications, it wasn't about that. It was putting myself in a school and making friends and just learning how to cope with my FASD in like a academic environment. I didn't leave school with any GCSEs, but that doesn't matter to me. What I took from school was that it grew me as a person, and I learned so much about myself in that. It was really up and down. I had good teachers, I had bad teachers, I had very close teachers to me. And I think that's really important. If you have one teacher that you get along with and that can support you and understands you, that makes a massive difference. And sometimes you don't get that option. There's a lot of kids out there that don't have that teacher, but I feel like that is a massive thing for me.
Do you think the term that we use quite a lot when we're talking to families, so we say connection before any correction. So in a school classroom, connect with that child first is the most important thing.
100%, 100%. Because for me, I needed to feel like teachers were on my side and that they kind of had my back for me to be able to thrive. So yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Were there any sort of specific challenges that you faced in school or in a learning environment, be that like friends or transitions or specific subjects even?
Definitely. I definitely had my struggles. Was never good at maths. Really struggled with maths, and it was just something that I couldn't get into my head. No matter how many teachers tried to word it differently, it just wouldn't go into my head. But I was really lucky to have like a Senko unit where I could go to if I felt overwhelmed. So if I was in a mainstream lesson and I did feel that, oh, I need to get out of here, I could take my work to somewhere else and do it on my own.
Mhm.
So that support was really good, but I definitely did struggle with like maths, science, and I kind of got frustrated at myself. But then I learned that actually it's okay to not understand this, and maybe in a couple years, or you could like just try again, keep trying.
I think that's really interesting because, like, I have a 13-year-old, and I'm not going to talk about my lived experience, but we're about to go into her 14 to 16-year-old transition EHCP review. And obviously, now she's that age, they're asking for her input on the review. So one of the questions were, what do you need help with? What would you like more support with? Every single box that is related to that just says maths, maths.
Yeah.
Maths, because like we've tried all the interventions with Go Henry cards, and we do really try, but just like you, it is just not easy for her, and she's frustrated and upset, especially now she can see her peers can do the same. So we're just trying to put in as many supports as possible, but I hear that all the time about maths, so I'm figuring I'm not alone as a parent, as I'm sure many people here this evening will feel the same. So can I ask you this then? What strategies did you find helpful in managing education from not only the school and your teachers, but maybe from your parents? What did your parents do to help the school get on board, and what did the teachers or the school do to help make things easier? Not necessarily, the best, but just easier.
I think communication is massive. Having that relationship with your parents and the school, and so your parents are up to date with what's going on, because if they're not in the loop, they can't really support you. So I felt like every time I come home, I tried to explain to Dad what went wrong and what went good. And what went wrong, we would be able to sort out, but we'd also take achievements from what I'd done good. So I recognise that actually, no, I'd done good things. It doesn't matter if I couldn't do that. I was still able to do this. Like, yeah.
Did you think that at 13 or 14, your parents were maybe too much involved, or did you always recognize that they were doing everything for you? Because we hear a lot about the conflict between, very young teens wanting to break out to be themselves and not wanting this parent all the time. And then as parents, we're trying to be, oh, they're a little bit vulnerable. And I just wonder if for you went, like, you and your dad have a brilliant relationship now that you're older, but was there a period of like conflict that you had to get through?
Oh, definitely. I was definitely a 13-year-old who didn't want her dad sat in the meetings with her.
Yeah.
I definitely wanted to do it on my own. But now I look back, I'm very grateful that Dad was there. Because having your parents, it's another site of awareness. They can kind of see what's going on from outside your head. Like, I'm talking about myself.
Yeah.
But yeah. I definitely felt like I was I've always been very independent.
Yeah.
So Dad's always let me have my independence. Both of my parents have. They've always let us have our free time, do what you want, keep safe, but also they probably have their worries. They definitely have had their worries over the years, but they've let me do it and let me fail, learn from their mistakes, but also supported me through them failures.
Yeah. And do you think that's like, I'm going slightly off education for a sec, but do you think that's important as a parent or caregiver to allow your children to just take that little step that is still safe, but you as a parent probably know it's gonna fail, but to just let them fail and then pick them up? Do you think that is a good thing to do? Because we have a lot of parents who just don't want, failure. And
yeah,
I suppose I sit in that like camp, keep them safe, keep them safe, keep them safe, but we need to allow them to grow, do we not?
yeah, 100%. you have to learn from your failures, and it is hard because I can see my parents wanting to protect me. Every parent with any child, let alone someone with a disability, wants to protect their child. But you have to come to the day where you're just like, let them go a little bit, and
Yeah.
then let them come back to you if they need the help. Because
Mhm.
I've definitely had them failed and then had to go to dad for help.
And then you go, come on, Dad, help me.
Yeah,
Right, go. Yeah, and then Dad's still there, right? And he
yeah,
just goes, yeah, okay, let's just go back. And there's no backward discussion. It's just like, let's move forward. Okay, so my final education question is post like your formal education in, compulsory school,
yeah.
did you continue with any other courses? Did you do vocational training, or what did you do sort of post 16 to where you are now at 21, advocating and everything?
Yeah, I went to college. I done animal care, which was really good, and I completed the course early, which I think surprised my teachers and my parents. But um, yeah, I did. I went to college, and then I went on to do an apprenticeship with McDonald's for 3 years.
Mhm.
And I only left last year, actually. But yeah.
Okay. Okay, so let's move on to work then. So can I ask you, what was the first work experience that you ever did? And did you do work experience? And if so, what were those people like with you?
I was very lucky with my first work experience because it was my uncle.
Oh, right.
I'll go from someone who didn't know me. I worked at a dog kennels, and that was completely new to me. I'd never been to work, obviously, and because I had such a positive experience from that, it really empowered me to want to get a job and hold that down. And
Mhm.
I knew that I could do it from that.
Was so once you'd done that, did you go straight to apply for a job, or did you sort of wait, or?
I did, yeah. I was finishing college and decided actually I want to have something from where when I do finish college to keep me busy.
Mhm.
And my sister had previously worked for McDonald's, so I kind of it wasn't easy work, but I knew that like I'd be able to get a job there, and yeah, the people in there would be able to support me.
So when you went to McDonald's, can I ask you, are there any sort of specific accommodations or supports that you feel you or other people with FASD or a prenatal alcohol exposure would need in a working environment?
Yeah, I think it's having a good relationship with your manager and them understanding your disability as well. Don't feel afraid to talk to them about it. Um, and I think for me, I think it was the schedules, being able to have like accommodated schedules. If I felt overwhelmed, being able to clock out for 5 minutes and just not have that pressure of being judged about it as well. It was very normal for me to, okay, I'm a bit overwhelmed, gonna take 5 minutes, gonna come back and it'll be fine. And
Yeah.
that was the normal, and no one judged me for it. No one said no. They were just, yeah, there to support me.
So can I ask, how long were your shifts when you were at McDonald's?
So it really varied, but I mainly done 6 until 2. So 6 in the morning till 2. And for me that worked perfectly, because I'd still have the rest of the day. And also
Still
it's just,
quite a long period of time though, isn't it?
yeah,
To sort of keep yourself together for that period of time. It's like it's still an 8-hour shift, isn't it?
yeah,
6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, yeah, 8 hours. So it's still like to manage that and be able to do that is like, it's quite inspiring. But I suppose maybe places like McDonald's, who are big corporate organizations, have a bigger understanding of neurodiversity. Do you think that employers who are larger corporations are going to be more able to accommodate?
I think there's a more of an expectation for them to accommodate, but I think you can get really lucky if you work somewhere with just one manager, family business. It really varies, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you're sort of thinking about applying, and you know, you're maybe not now because you're advocating and it's a different place that you're in, but when you were probably planning and applying and looking for a job, how did you do that? Were you supported by family? Did you have a CV? Who helped you put it together?
Yeah.
Did you disclose your disability at the point of applying or after you got the job? I'm just really interested to know what that experience is like.
Yeah. So in school, they do help you create a CV. And I think understanding how to make a CV and recognizing all your achievements is on its own big. Oh, my mind's gone blank. Refresh the question to me.
No, like how did you, like, you know, when you sit there and you think, right, I'm gonna apply for a job, and you get your CV and maybe dad helps and you send it off, do you disclose FASD at that point or not?
So from McDonald's, I'm not going to say it's for everywhere, but there is a part of your application where it says if you want to disclose your disability. I think it's really important that you do, because then that's a conversation you can have when you go in for your interview and say, look, this is my disability. I understand it myself. This is what I need to be supported in, and just have that extra awareness and understanding of it. Yeah.
How did you, this is like a bit of a random aside question, but I'm just wondering, like now obviously you're older, but when you were younger and sort of approaching sort of that later teen years, who helped you to actually articulate and verbalize what your difficulties were? Because I mean, my daughter's a bit younger, but I think at 13 she'll just go, well, my brain's tired. And I just wonder, how do they get the language? How did you acquire the language to express what you needed?
I think for me, I went for a period of, I don't know, I didn't always understand my disability. I think when I was growing up, I was not ignorant towards it, but I understood it, but I didn't see or recognize any how it affected me. And then as you grow like older, you kind of look back and you go, oh, I struggled with that, and then you kind of learn from it and you pick up on little things that you recognize in yourself. There's little things that I do and I go, oh, I done that, and I'm like, I kind of just take a mental note.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So do you think you've acquired the language to communicate with people from the supports that you've had at home? Do you think that's been helpful in terms of, like, yeah, at 13 it's very annoying when mum and dad are saying that, but at 16, 17 you've now taken that like constant repetition to be able to repeat and advocate?
Yeah, I think it's, for me, because I've been doing it since I was so young. I've been really lucky to go to, well, read up about FASD and kind of do my own little research into it and figure it out myself, and had my own little journey of, like, I don't know how to word it really. Yeah, I think,
Journey of brilliance, I think, Georgia. Like, you're doing amazing and you're only 21. Like, how many 21-year-olds can say they've spoken at Parliament and they've done TV? So despite everything, it's like, I just remember people saying words like superpower, find their brilliance. They've all got amazing, you know, skills. And I think you stand for that, don't you? Because it, you know, the real world belief that is passed on to neurotypical families is we all need to go through the same educational trajectory of GCSEs and A levels and university, but actually that isn't a measure of success for everybody, and neurodiversity means you go to your success in different routes. And I think you're like standing there as a trailblazer for all these young children who are coming up behind, and for families to be able to say, look, you know, this, yes, your brain is a bit different, but look at what this girl's done, look at what this boy's done, because that's what inspires the next generation, I think. So I think you can be totally proud of what you're doing to date. So can I ask you another question? What are your, I guess, your long-term goals in terms of a career? Is your career now advocating and raising awareness, and what would you like to achieve moving forward?
Yeah, I would definitely love to make this a career. That's not the only thing I'm passionate in, but it's something that I understand, and it's like riding a bike. It's like in the secondhand knowledge, and I just feel so passionate like towards it that I'd love to be able to advocate and just empower other kids and just make them feel an equal, because I know what that feels like to not feel like an equal. Definitely in school, and I was lucky because I had a great bunch of friends, really lucky. But yeah, I know what it feels like to not be an equal, and I don't want that. Like, I think it's really important as well. Sorry, I'm mumbling, but we like have national FASD and like the magazines that come out, and you can see other people's achievements, and I think that's massive when you can look at other people and be inspired by them.
Yeah. There's somebody just put in a chat, and I don't know the answer to the question, so they're asking at what age were you diagnosed, and were you struggling to meet developmental milestones? So I think they've got a daughter who's 4 and only able to say up to 3-word sentences and still not toilet trained. So I guess that, I mean, I can answer from my perspective as a mum, but I just wondered what age you were diagnosed.
So I had my official diagnosis in 2016, I believe. But that was when I went to the national clinic and got diagnosed with FASD, but had long suspicion the whole of my life. I knew I had FASD.
So how old were you then? So what are we now, 2024?
I think I was quite later on in
8 years.
13.
13, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the maths, but again, I wasn't very good at maths.
We'll go with 13, Georgia. 13. Yeah. I'm not good at maths either, and I haven't got FASD. I'm just not good at maths.
But from learning from my parents, I also had the diagnosis of autism. But I think FASD affects you just the same. But I did not speak when I was younger. I think I had to go to speech therapy, and again, really struggled with toilet training with me. I remember being in my lower school. I was probably in year 2, year 3, and I still just, my body wouldn't be able to tell me if I needed to go to the toilet, and I just really struggled with that. So I think it's, I hate to say normal, but it's
a spectrum, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's a spectrum. So my daughter, just to input on that question, is 13, and she was diagnosed in 2020, so she was 10. And yeah, she definitely was not good with sentences at all. And even at 13, she can respond now to a question, but there's not much surface underneath if you ask any other stuff. She was all right with toilet training, but then it's everybody's different. One person with FASD, one person with FASD. And
that's a massive thing, because it's such a hard disability to understand, because everyone presents so differently, and that's a conversation I have so often with people when I meet them, is how can there be just so many two ends of the spectrum, really? And everyone's just floating around in the middle.
Everybody's just like that. It's like that, isn't it? I had a social worker come to my house today to meet my daughter, and my daughter had just come in from school, so highly dysregulated, starving, hungry, left for school at 8:15, comes in at 4:45. So I'm trying to give her food so she could at least engage with the social worker for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
It's funny, I left them on their own for half an hour. I was only there for 15 minutes of the conversation, and I went in and we're sort of chatting, and then all of a sudden my daughter's currently got like false nails on that she had done in the holidays, and she just went, all of a sudden, can we talk about my nails? When can I have infills? I was just like, well, that is just really random in the middle of a conversation. And then she was like, oh, you know, Lily's coming on Saturday. And I'm just like, this is nothing to do with what we're talking about.
Yeah.
But you just deal with it and try and explain to the professional as they leave. Well, that's what FASD is. That like,
Yeah, I relate to that massively because I could be in the middle of watching a film and not realise that the other person's really immersed into this film, and I'll just be like, so what should we have for dinner tomorrow then? Or just start a completely random conversation. I don't
yeah,
mean to, but it's just my brain. It's just my
yeah.
brain.
And that's what I find really quite strange at times. I mean, you know, you get used to it as a parent, but I do think and it's very hard because I think the majority of people look normal, talk normal, and generally have fairly good expressive language.
Yeah.
So, you know, you and I have conversed before this and we had a plan for tonight, but, you know, nobody would know looking at us tonight whether I had FSD or you did.
Yeah.
There's no way of looking at a person and knowing.
No, no.
Okay, so let's move on to my gosh, see, I told you we'd have loads to talk about. We're halfway through and we're not even halfway through any of the things I wanted to ask. So how comfortable, I would want to ask, is how comfortable do you feel advocating for yourself and for other people now in the various situations that you found yourself in, especially over the last couple of years that I've actually been aware of what you're doing? How comfortable do you feel? Are you relaxed? Are you nervous? How do you feel?
I get nervous, especially when I'm talking publicly. Still feel them nerves, but I do it anyway. I think that's a massive thing. Feel the fear and do it anyway.
Yeah.
But I'm really confident into advocating for myself. But I think it's just because I've read so much about it. I've had that life experience that I'm like, even if they were to disagree with me, I can say, well, everyone's different. This is my way of coping. And it's not going to be the same for everyone. This is my journey. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
There's somebody on the chat tonight who says, I'm 11.
Oh.
I would like to know if you had any support pets to help with your FASD.
Yes, I did. I'm very lucky. We have got 5 dogs, and my dog I've had since I was 7. No, I wasn't. I was 9, and she's got one eye, and she is the best support dog ever. Best support dog, but they make such a difference. Just being able to stroke any animal just calms you down, gives you something to focus on, and
Yeah.
it for me as well. It's not gets you out of bed in the morning, gives you something that to take your mind off things, because when you have FASD, your mind's constantly at 100 miles per hour thinking about random things at different times, and it's really hard to focus on things. But when I go for a walk with the dogs, I'm just in the moment with that dog. I don't have to worry about everything else. So yeah, I did have support dogs, and I was very lucky too.
Yeah, I got a support dog for my daughter. Our dog is now 4 years old, and we got her from Ali McCormick from FASD Dogs. And yeah, I was absolutely never having a dog. Never having a dog. No, can't cope with the dog. So I bought my daughter a kitten a year before I got the dog. But the dog is, well, actually, it's a bit of therapy for me because I can take it out and just breathe. But for her, oh my goodness, made the biggest difference, especially at these teenage years, because I think even when she's angry at me, the dog is like better to talk to than me, because the time that she doesn't like me, she likes the dog. So yeah, I mean, just my input as a parent, I've seen a huge difference by having this support dog. And honestly, I would say saved our lives in a lot of ways, just as a family, just like making such a difference. Even like we go on holidays and only book cottages where we can take the dog, because we just know if there's dysregulation, we can send her out with the dog and everything calms down instantly. Best friends. Okay, another question. Have you encountered any instances whilst you've been advocated where you felt that people hadn't addressed your needs or discussed them, or they weren't met?
Is that in education or
No,
in
in advocating, you know, if you go somewhere and somebody says, oh, Georgia, can you speak at this?
yeah,
Everywhere you've been, has there been people talking to you about what you need? How much time to get on the stage? Do you need some water? Do you need a
yeah,
break? Have you been accommodated so far, or?
yeah, I've only had positive experience. Like, I'm very lucky that mostly my dad comes with me
Yeah,
to most things, but I've never had anyone turn around and say a bad thing about it. They always learn and take something away from it, and that's all, you know, all you can ask for people, really.
yeah. So if you come away thinking, wow, that was a great experience, I did a good job, and I feel good,
Yeah,
then it's a positive experience, isn't it, really, for you?
100%. It's so rewarding, and especially if I do a talk and get approached afterwards and people ask me questions, I just think I just love it because the people are taking an interest in it. I find it so rewarding.
And I think, you know, it doesn't matter how many people deliver FASD training, whether it's parents or caregivers or professionals. I think for anybody, the lived experience is a total different element, because we're all talking, and you know, I'm talking about my daughter and my experience, your dad's talking about his family, you know, everybody involved. It's quite a small community when you look at it, and it's all these warrior parents, but now these warrior parents have got children who've got voices, who can rise up and support the whole message. And I just think the voice of lived experience is so much more powerful. The parent voice is great for supporting the parents,
Yeah,
but the lived experience is probably what, you know, all the young children coming up, and also the parents who have got younger children, need to hear, because hopefully by people like you coming forward and expressing the challenges you may have faced and the successes that you've had, it will change the way parents parent and what
yeah,
they look for, I would hope.
yeah, 100%. And but these last couple of years as well, what's helped me massively is meeting other people with FASD. I've yeah, it's just I think it's so positive and it needs to happen more. You don't it's I didn't really spend any time with anyone with FASD other than my own siblings until probably 2021. I hadn't met anyone with FASD.
Mm.
And when I did, it was like, you understand me, I understand you, and it was just really,
Like
really,
connection, totally. Yeah.
yeah,
I think that's
100%.
really key. Like my daughter just is friends with Rossi. That's it. That's the only other person she knows.
Yeah,
And
I was gonna say Rosie.
yeah.
That was the first
And
person
he's
I,
like, you know, he's 21, she's 13, but the connection is there.
yeah, yeah.
So somebody's just written, did you have friends at school? And did you ever get bullied? And this is from Jade, who's 12.
Oh, hello, Jade. I had really good friends and some really bad ones. Um, but for me, I really struggled with maintaining relationships with anyone, but friendships massively. Um, but yeah, I had really good friends that understood me, but also some that didn't and did find me a bit weird, a bit strange, didn't really understand. But sometimes you are going to meet them people, but you have to ignore them and just think, I no, I understand me. I'm doing the best I can. And
Mm.
there are going to be people out there that want to be your friend and want to hang out with you.
And some people, you know, even just like without FASD, friendships for teenage girls, and Jade's 12, are difficult.
Yeah,
So sometimes you
100%.
have to just go, okay, they're not the right friendship group for me, and hopefully have parental support that will steer you in a direction that might be a little bit more positive. I'm just
100%.
going to take 1 second to answer a question from a teacher who said, I need to approach parents about their child who I think has FSD. I'd like to be able to do this sensitively in a way that won't make them run for the hills or feel like they're being attacked. Do you have any pointers? first thing I would advise is feel free to ring the FASD Hub advice line. But the one thing I would say, and I probably shouldn't say much more on here, and I will leave Barbara to comment in the chat if she wants to add more to this. But what I would advise is that you suggest to the parents that the child is referred for a neurodevelopmental assessment. You don't need to mention FASD, ASD, ADHD. You just need them to be referred for a neurodevelopmental assessment. You as a school teacher would have to fill in some paperwork. It would all be confidential, I believe. I think you could express what your thoughts were, but you don't need to have that confrontation. You just need to pass that on to professionals who will then evidence that situation and move forward. So I hope that's helpful, but please feel free to reach out to us for further information, and I'm sure if Barbara can add more, she will in the chat. I'm just going to move on to another question, Georgia. My 24-year-old son is unable to get out much due to his FASD and early birth trauma. He has trauma triggers, and his FASD means he cannot think quick enough to overcome the triggers, and so the world is very hard for him. He desperately wants to be independent, but is unable to get out into the world and work, and the stress exhausts him. Do you have any advice?
I've definitely been there. It's not all just been smooth sailing. I have spent when I got to year 10, I really struggled with my attendance, really struggled to going into school, and that's why I didn't complete my GCSEs in the end. But the outside world to me was really intimidating. I felt like no one understood me. I was just, yeah, it was hard. But I think the more, my mind's gone blank again.
No, it's all right.
Sorry.
So he's sort of saying the stress of the world, and he
Yeah.
can't get out. So how, when you were sort of in year 10 and really stressing, and you didn't do your GCSEs, which is relevant, but how did you, regardless of GCSEs, what helped you eventually engage and get out into the world?
I think you have to keep pushing yourself, and that's hard because it's really intimidating. But for me, I think I got to the point where I just do little things to gain my confidence back. Like, it sounds really silly, but even little hobbies, baking on my own, being a bit more independent at home on my own, gave me that confidence to be able to like go out and be a bit more confident, because I'm kind of standing on my own 2 feet, not like solely, but I just felt a lot more confident to do so. But yeah, I found as well, I understand the part about your brain not being quick enough, because with me, I still struggle with understanding what has triggered me. It still can take a while. So the way my brain processes is something will upset me. I'm not aware it's upsetting me. And then 20 minutes later, then I'm able to go, oh, that's what's upset me.
Yeah.
And then I can do something about it. But I don't beat myself up over it. That's just the way my brain processes.
Yeah. So do you have that like reaction, and everybody's going, oh, and then later you can sort of go, yeah, well, you don't understand, this happened, but that thing that happened that triggered it, you couldn't verbalize at the time?
100%, 100%, and it happens probably
Oh,
daily.
Georgie, you need to live at my house. I think that's what I'm living. I'm reflecting back all the time, going, what happened there? Like I didn't see it coming. Don't know what it was. It's all hysterical, and then it's like afterwards we sort it out, and I'm like, oh my goodness. It's like being a detective. We do often say, as parents, you need to be a detective, because individuals can't always tell you in the moment what is happening. So you need to start looking at when these things are happening and trying to piece together the bit before, because often that can't be expressed until later.
Yeah.
And I definitely don't think we're experts, but I think by helping, I think you can just prompt the conversation to try and find out later.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you another question, because somebody's put, have you ever had a problem with swearing? Our 5-year-old just swears all the time, but doesn't hear it at home. So did you ever swear, Georgia?
See, I was quite a goody two shoes. In our house, it was no, you don't swear. But my little brother Callum, who also has FASD, was definitely a potty mouth. Like just, but it's not his fault. It was just that was his language at the time. That's what his brain was used to, and it would just come out, and he wouldn't mean it. And I still do it sometimes, where I'll come out with the strangest thing, and I'm like, that was actually meant to come out. But it is hard. Yeah, but I don't think I had a problem with swearing, but I definitely have other issues as well.
Well, my daughter has a problem with swearing now, but
Oh, I do now, but back in the day,
that's a new thing, and I think that might be a sort of teenage thing. And she's quite apologetic quite quickly as soon as she's done it. So, but she didn't at 5. So I think definitely it's worth looking a little bit further at that, and when that sort of happens. So please feel free to give us a call, and we can give you more advice. You can head to the website, and Barbara, I'm sure, will drop in some more information. So let's move on to another question. What strategies do you use, Georgia, to communicate your needs effectively to others? So if you go, so I know your dad goes with you a lot, so it's maybe not something you've actually had to do, but if you were suddenly out doing a presentation on your own,
yeah.
what would you say were the things you needed to be able to maybe stand up for an hour and do a Q&A with a few people? What would you require to make that easy or manageable for you?
Little things I do. This might sound really strange. This is just me. But if I'm in a situation where I'm stressed or I feel really anxious, I either use breathing techniques or I find something and I point to each corner, or I find something that I can count and I just keep counting it and keep counting it. It just gives my brain something to focus on. I do it even now. I'll go into like maybe Pets at Home and I go to the fish and I'll just count all the fish in the tank if I start getting overstimulated. It's just a little coping mechanism that my brain's developed that I don't even think I really meant to.
Yeah. So do you do meditation type things or breathing exercises to music, or do you just meditate yourself, or do you just do breathing?
Just do breathing, but now you said like music, I think you mentioned it really briefly then, but music is a massive thing for me.
Yeah.
If I feel overwhelmed, I'm because I can drive, I'll get in the car, put the music all the way up, and just drown out my head for a bit. And even that, maybe 10 minutes in the car with loud music on, kind of gives my brain that break of anxiety, and then I can breathe, like go back into a situation.
That is really strange, because well, my daughter walks, she walks up and down, she always has music, but when I look back to when we first had her place with us, she was 11 months old, and I just remember driving from the south of England, where I live, to the north of England, to Yorkshire, where my mum lives, with her in the car for the very first time. And she had a dummy, and my son was with me, so he was probably 5.5 and she was like a year old. And this journey was an absolute nightmare. It was a nightmare because she just screamed the entire journey. And I had like this little plastic Tupperware thing with dummies in that I just kept handing back for the dummies. But the only time she stopped crying in our car journey was when I played like really loud Bon Jovi rock music with a heavy beat on like 20 in my car stereo, and she would just stop. I had a headache when I got there, but it was the bass beat that for some reason, like when I turned it up loud, she would stop crying.
Yeah.
And she'd stop crying and I'd turn it down and she would start again. And I'd turn it up. And that was what I did. 4.5 hours, 5 hours drive, turn it up, turn it down, throw a dummy, turn it up, turn it down, throw a dummy. So it's quite funny that, because I just think music is sort of processed in a different part of the brain to, your executive functioning. That's why so many children with a neurodiversity or young people are very often very good at singing and art and creativity and that type of thing, because that part of the brain is another part of the brain. And yeah, I just actually remember that journey of like the music. So you just wonder, don't you, if that would be good for everybody to try. It may not work for everybody because it is a spectrum, as we said, but I think we'd definitely be trying it. So we haven't got very long left, Georgia, and I've still got quite a few questions, but I'm going to move on to just daily living skills, really. So obviously, I think our audience, parents and caregivers, are always worried about, the long-term sort of way that their children's lives will develop as they progress from young teens to young adults, to how will life look. So I just want to ask you, what daily routines and habits do you find are helpful for you to manage your sort of day-to-day life?
That, I think day-to-day life is a big thing, and routine, I think, comes up a lot, but it's so important. For me, if I'm out of a routine, I have no control of my symptoms. I have nothing. But if I go to bed at the same time, wake up similar time, I'm a lot better than if I just have a random day where I sleep until 12. Like, so that's massive for me. I think making sure I eat regularly, I think, is important, because I think with people with FASD, I don't know if I'm the only one, but I kind of forget to, or I don't see it as important, and then I'll let my mood drop, and then by the time my moods drop, I don't even realize I'm hungry. So I think making sure that you eat like frequently is good as well, and spending time with the animals as well.
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
Are there any sort of specific tasks or skills that you'd like to improve upon for yourself to increase your independence? Are there things that still now you're thinking, if I'm better at that, that will help me be more independent?
Are we talking like day-to-day, like little tasks?
Yeah, just like, is it like money? Is it managing bills? Is it filling your car up with petrol? Is it checking your tires? Is there things like that that you still feel, I would like to be totally in control of that, and I've still got, family input, and I don't want them to do it, I want to be able to do it?
Yeah, I think for me, my finances, I get very overwhelmed by, really overwhelmed by. Luckily, I don't pay too many bills. I live at home with my parents, but when bills do have to come out, I do find it really stressful. Paying things on time. I kind of get mentally paralyzed as well if there's too much going on. Like, if I feel too overwhelmed with my finances, I won't do anything about it. But that I want to work on, become better with.
Does your dad like support with all of that for you?
He does, but he doesn't check up on me like a lot about it. I'll approach him and say I need a bit of help doing this, and then he'll help me. But I think it's recognizing, I do need that help, and then you can kind of work from that and understand what you need to improve on. For me, definitely.
Yeah, so at least, so he's not controlling it, he's letting you do it, and then you're going back to ask for help, rather than, because very often I know we work with families, and sometimes I wonder for myself, like, which is the right way, because some people I know totally control it all, and their young person has no input, but they want input. And then other people are like you, where actually they have the control, but the parent is there to support. And I think that is probably the better way. Would you agree?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Because otherwise you're never gonna grow, are you? Somebody's always just
No.
doing it for you.
No.
Okay, so how do you manage your time and your sort of responsibilities on a daily basis, in terms of who wakes you up in the morning? Is that you? Who gets you to a place on time? Is that you? Do you still have support?
So I'm very lucky. I wake up with my boyfriend, and he'll normally wake me up. But that massively helps me because I don't have to set my alarm in the evening. It's kind of taken care of, but then it kind of just leaves me to get out of bed, because getting out of bed for me is one of the hardest things. I think for everyone it is. But having that support there. What else? Oh,
So is your boyfriend neurotypical?
No, he's not. He's normal.
So, and he copes with your FASD well?
It's definitely been a journey, but he's done nothing but support me. So yeah, I'm very grateful for that.
Well, that's good. All success then in the end.
Yeah.
Have you received, and I think this is probably really important to parents and caregivers, have you received any training or support for developing your independent living skills outside of mum and dad, anywhere in sort of education or social care or anything? Has there been any support for you for that, for developing those daily living skills?
I wouldn't say there has been. It's mainly been my parents. Yeah. And like I say, I've been very independent from a young age, been very stubborn. So I think it's just been, yeah, learning how to be independent on my own. So, yeah.
But I guess that's just like having parents there, isn't it? It seems to fall to the parents. We've got loads of comments talking about the positivity of music in our chat this evening. So
Yeah.
clearly it's not just you and me, it's clearly everybody. So what are some of the goals you have for improving your daily life in the near future? And what sort of goals do you have further long term in terms of independent living and relationships and moving on to fully fledged adulthood? What sort of hopes and dreams do you have?
I know I can move out, and I think a lot of, I don't know if I'm the only one with FASD that kind of doubted myself in that. I was like, can I actually look after myself? But I'd love to move out, and I know I can.
Do you have a plan? Georgia, do you have a plan? Do you have a plan to move out?
No, I don't. I don't have a plan to move out, but I already know the houses I'd like to buy. So
Do you have a Pinterest board full of all the things you like?
I do. Yeah, I do.
So to move out, what do you think you need to be able to do that you can't currently do confidently?
Do the washing. Mum does that. But I think consistently being able to look after myself, because I have been through a journey of having depression and being low and just finding it really hard to look after yourself. But cooking for myself more regularly, picking up the hobbies I used to enjoy, like baking. Yeah.
Where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Or I would love to be advocating for people with FASD and myself. I'd love to be moved out. I could see that. Yeah, I can see the apron. I can see the mugs in the cupboard. Yeah.
I think you'll achieve that though. You've done incredible things in your life so far, and you've grown, even in the short time since I've seen you and sort of known about you, you've grown so much in confidence. I remember meeting you for the first time, and I don't think you ever spoke.
No, I didn't. Yeah.
And like your ability to articulate your story and inspire other young people and parents and caregivers, I think is just absolutely amazing, and a real credit to you and to your dad, because I think it really does give parents that are living that journey now with younger children the sort of inspiration to go forward, because you're a credit to your dad and you're a credit to yourself. But when you're in the midst of it and things are not great and you think, how is it going to be when my child is 21, and then you hear your stories and they're the same stories our community are living, then there's hope and there's inspiration. And it's like, with the right strategy and support and scaffolding, people can achieve. And so your dad and his work and our work and your work, I think, only is going to move forward for positive change to everybody. I'm sure, Georgia, that you're just going to be around the FASD community and scene forever. I'm sure you're going to do great things. Do you think you'll have your own advocating company, or do you think you're going to stay working with Dad, or do you think you're going to move around and just take your own little bits that you want to do?
Well, I'd love to take over from Dad one day, and carry on what he does, which is training. That's something I love doing, especially with people that have never heard of FASD before.
Yeah.
That's really rewarding. But going back like a moment ago, like saying that people in the same situation and having that inspiration to look forward to in a way, just always remember things will change. Like right now, it might seem a bit rubbish, whatever your child's going through, but things can change, and quite drastically, like quickly as well. Like you'll suddenly notice that like they're picking up new things and they'll just gain confidence, like, and grow and grow and grow. Yeah.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us tonight, Georgia. It's been a pleasure to speak to you. You've been amazing. I know it was slightly nerve-wracking taking on this whole thing, but you've done incredible. I told you you would, and you did. Thank you to you. Thank you to your dad. Thank you for joining us. I hope that you'll come back and join us again. I'm sure we will.
Yeah.
Everybody's saying it's been such an inspiration to listen to you. So thank you so much. Go enjoy your evening. We'll see you again very soon, and take care of yourself.
And you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.